Welcome, everybody, to the July 23rd Mountain Science and Energy Museum Association Tech Talk tonight. We're honored to have Jerry Black from the Mars Society, the Ohio State chair for their chapter. Jerry's had a real interesting career, kind of envious to a lot of us geeks, where he spent 40 years in the aerospace industry working for Bell Aerosystems as a rocket test engineer, which that sounds pretty cool, and then went to GE Aviation as a staff engineer. And so he's going to talk to us tonight about the SpaceX, the Starship, and how that might get us to Mars and back to the moon here in the next decade or so. So I'll go ahead and let Jerry take it over.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Well, today I'll talk about the latest launch vehicle that SpaceX is developing, the Starship. Now, this photo shows the Starship on its launch mount at the southern tip of Texas. The Starship is a big deal. It will be the first fully reusable launch vehicle, and as such, it will have a transformative effect on the launch industry and the space industry in general. But that's not all. The Starship is also the largest and most powerful launch vehicle ever, and it's also the most versatile. The second stage of the Starship is designed so it can land not only back on Earth, but it can land on the moon or on Mars. The Starship will be used to return astronauts to the moon, probably later this decade, and I believe it will also be used to land the first astronauts on Mars, probably sometime in the 2030s. Not only that, but the Starship is being built with one central purpose in mind, and that is to fulfill Elon Musk's ambition of building a city on Mars and thus make human life multiplanetary. So tonight I'm representing the Ohio chapter of the Mars Society, which is an organization I've been involved with ever since it was founded back in 1998. The Mars Society is an international organization, so the Ohio chapter is just one of many. And the purpose is to promote the exploration of Mars, both human and robotic, and also to promote the eventual settlement of the red planet. And also attending tonight is the new chair of the Ohio chapter, Alexander Watts. Can you raise your hand? Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so no talk about the Starship would be complete without talking about Elon Musk, because it's Elon Musk who founded the company SpaceX, and he's the one who conceived of the Starship, and he's also the chief designer of the Starship. Okay, so Elon Musk is a billionaire, an inventor, an innovator, and an engineer. Now, unfortunately, in the last couple of years or so, he's become a very polarizing figure. And that's unfortunate because it certainly hasn't helped his companies, Tesla or SpaceX. He purchased Twitter and renamed it X. And he tweets very often on on X, and he has over 222 million followers, and that's more than any other person. And of course, he helped Trump get elected in 2024. Elon Musk is an immigrant. He was born in and grew up in South Africa. So I'd like to point out that there's a clause in the US Constitution that the president has to be a natural-born citizen, which Elon is not. So Elon can't run for president, for those of you who may have been worried about that prospect. But there's one thing that's undeniable, whether you like him or not. He's a brilliant and visionary entrepreneur. He's founded several companies. Tesla and SpaceX are the most well-known of his companies, and they've both been hugely successful. He's been described as the Thomas Edison of our time. So Elon realized that in order to make life multiplanetary, he had to drastically cut the cost of space transportation. The only way to do that is to make the rockets reusable. But he knew this would be hard, so he started out with a rocket that he made partially reusable, and that was the Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 was first flown in 2010, and it's the first economical, partially reusable orbital launch vehicle. Now, I say economical because the space shuttle was actually the first partially reusable launch vehicle. But with the space shuttle, they expended that very large and expensive external tank on each launch. And also it took months to refurbish every space shuttle before they could fly it again. So it wasn't economical. It actually cost more to launch a payload on the space shuttle than it would have on an expendable launch vehicle. By contrast, it's much less expensive to launch a payload on the Falcon 9 than any expendable launch vehicle. So why is reusability so important? Well, it turns out that the propellant cost is only 0.3% of the cost of the launch. Now, that's not 3%, that's 0.3%, or 0.3%. So it's really negligible compared to the cost of the launch. The remaining cost is mainly the cost of the launch vehicle. And in the space transportation industry, the launch vehicle has typically been discarded after only one flight. Now imagine if it was a commercial airline and they discarded the commercial airline after only a single flight. The cost of an airline ticket would be astronomical, and there wouldn't be much of an airline industry. Well, Elon Musk realized that the first stage is the most important because on the Falcon 9, that comprises 70% of the cost. So SpaceX has now mastered the art of recovering and reusing not only the first stage, but also the payload fairing, which is the payload fairing is the part on the top that protects the payload during launch. Now, the way they recover the first stage, these attachments that are black here on the bottom are landing legs. And during launch, they're folded up like this against the side of the vehicle. But then right before landing, they pop out. And so here they pop out like this, and here the first stage is about to land back at Cape Canaveral, close to the launch, where it was launched from. Now, if the payload is light enough, they'll bring the first stage back to Cape Canaveral. But for heavier payloads, they don't have enough fuel to bring it back to the Cape. So they'll land it on a ship in the ocean. It's actually a barge, but it's, they call it a drone ship. There are no humans aboard. You wouldn't want, for safety purposes, you certainly wouldn't want anybody aboard the ship when the thing lands. And here's how they recover the payload fairing. The payload fairing splits into two halves and is jettisoned once it's through the thickest part of the atmosphere. And then it just floats back by parachute. And the two halves are recovered in a ship and brought back to land and refurbished. So the government had 6 programs that I know of to develop reusable launch vehicles that were actually economical. And all of these government programs failed. So this shows how hard it is to do this. The current operational vehicles for SpaceX are the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy. The Falcon 9 comes in 2 versions. The version on the left has the Dragon spacecraft on top, and that's used to launch astronauts to and from the International Space Station, as well as carrying cargo to and from the space station. And the configuration on the right is for satellites and science missions to low Earth orbit and beyond. Now, Falcon Heavy is essentially comprised of parts taken from the Falcon 9. There are 3 first stages from the Falcon 9. These are called boosters that are strapped together. And it has the exact same second stage and the exact same payload fairing as the Falcon 9. And the advantage of the Falcon Heavy, it can launch 3 times the payload weight as the Falcon 9. And it's used, again, for satellites and science missions to low Earth orbit and beyond. Now, typically, the 2 side-mounted boosters from the Falcon Heavy are recovered and reused. The center booster reaches a much higher altitude before the fuel is used up, so that is usually expended. Okay, and this shows how the 2 side-mounted boosters land, and you can see the launch legs pop out right before it lands. So that's a pretty amazing feat. Took a lot of innovation, and but the Starship, they're going to land in an entirely different way, which is also very innovative, which I'll show later. So this figure shows the number of Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launches from 2010 onward. And last year they launched the Falcon 9 132 times. This year their goal is 170 launches. And they've already launched it to orbit 90 times this year, and all the 90 flights have gone perfectly, so there's a good chance that they'll reach the goal of 170 launches this year. Now, the big increase in launches since about 2020 is due to these communication satellite constellations that a lot of companies such as SpaceX and Amazon and other companies are putting up. They require a lot of launches. So the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have been enormously successful. The Falcon 9 has had over 500 launches to orbit or beyond. Only 3 out of the 500 have failed, so it has better than a 99% success rate. The Falcon 9 at one point achieved 335 consecutive launches, let me catch up here, without a failure. And that's more than 3 times as many consecutive launches without a failure than any other launch vehicle. So it's considered the most reliable launch vehicle ever. There have been 11 Falcon Heavy launches so far, and all 11 have been successful. They've also achieved 267 consecutive landings of either the Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy boosters without a failure. So they're also exceedingly reliable in landing the vehicle. And thus far, the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy are the only reusable orbital launch vehicles that are currently operational, though this may be changing in the near future. SpaceX charges the lowest launch prices in the industry. In the past year, SpaceX has accounted for more than 80% by weight of all the payloads launched into Earth orbit or beyond. They're winning the lion's share of the worldwide launch market, so they've had a completely disruptive effect on the launch industry, just as Tesla has had a completely disruptive effect on the automobile industry. So they've had a great success with the partial reusability, but the greatest benefit at all would come from full reusability, and that's where the Starship comes in. The Starship will be the first orbital launch vehicle that's fully reusable. And because it's fully reusable, it's going to cost less per launch than the Falcon 9 or the Falcon Heavy. And that's in spite of the fact that it's much bigger than the Falcon 9 and much more capable than either Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy. So since it's going to cost less per launch, SpaceX is planning to replace the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy with the Starship. Now, they're not going to do this right away. It's going to be phased out gradually. I figure Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy may fly for another 10 years or so before it's completely using the Starship. And once the Starship has proven safe to carry humans, it would also replace SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. So this is how SpaceX gets the revenue for funding what they're doing. They're mass producing these Starlink communication satellites. 2/3 of the Falcon 9 launches last year were for Starlink satellites. SpaceX currently has more than 7,000 functional Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth, and at least 12,000 and perhaps a lot more than 12,000 are planned. They launch usually about 27 satellites on a single launch of the Falcon 9. These satellites provide internet access and cell phone service worldwide, including remote regions where there are no cable service and no cell phone towers. And there'll be a particular boon to poorer countries such as Africa, where there are vast swaths of land that they don't have cable service or cell phone towers. So there'll be a very good thing for sure for those countries. The Starlink service already has over 6 million subscribers, and that's been growing very rapidly. They're adding at least 1 million subscribers every year, or more than 1 million. Its service is now available in over 100 countries, and that's been increasing also. SpaceX's revenue is projected to be about $15.6 billion this year. Now, only 1.1 billion of that 15.6 billion comes from NASA. They get some money from their launch business, but the big money maker is Starlink for sure. The revenue from Starlink has been increasing so rapidly that Elon Musk has predicted that the revenue for 2026 for SpaceX from these activities will exceed the entire NASA budget. So that's how much money they're making on this thing. And the Starlink is the main source of funding that's going to help fund Elon Musk's goal of generating a city on Mars and making life multiplanetary. And so far, it looks like this plan seems to be working or has promise of working. So the Starship is a two-stage launch vehicle. The first stage is called the Super Heavy. It's over here. And the second stage up here is the Starship. But what's a bit confusing is that the entire launch vehicle, the two stages together, is also called the Starship. So when they refer to the Starship, it can either refer to just the second stage or to both stages, depending on the context. So this is the Super Heavy, and one attribute of the Super Heavy is that it has lots and lots of rocket engines. There are 33 rocket engines to be exact. And this is the second stage, the Starship. It's got fins for aerodynamic control, 2 lower fins and 2 upper fins. And there are at least 3 different versions of the Starship. There's a version for carrying crew, a version for cargo, and then they'll have a third version which will act as a tanker vehicle to refuel the Starship in orbit. Now, that's a key new innovation that is going to be introduced with the Starship. The orbital refueling is very important, since by using orbital refueling, you can actually double or even triple the payload that you can send to the moon or to Mars. So the Starship can land back on Earth, it can land on the moon, it can land on Mars, or it can land on other bodies of the solar system. For instance, it could land on Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter, and carry a very heavy scientific payload to that body. And with orbital refueling, the Starship will be able to land more than 100 tons of cargo or 100 people on the surface of the moon or on the surface of Mars. So it's exceedingly capable. Starship development is taking place at the very tip of Texas here, at a site called the Starbase, where they both build and launch the Starship. Now, I was inspired to attend the first two launches of the full two-stage Starship vehicle, which I did in April and November of 2023. Some of the photos that follow are photos that I took on these two trips, and other photos I downloaded from the internet. So Starbase is the site where the Starships are both built and launched, and SpaceX is the owner. They own the land and they own the whole facility. There's no involvement by the government. It's one of the first commercial spaceports for orbital launches. That's me on the right in that photo, and I shared a hotel room with my two friends, Doug and Charles. Doug and Charles had drove their vehicle from California to attend the launch. And that's another sign that they have at Starbase.
That's just a liquor store down the street.
Okay, one cool thing about Starbase is that it's right along Route 4, which is a public road, and anyone can drive on that road and park their car along the side of the road and have a very good view of the launch site and the other facilities at Starbase. Now that's me in these two photos. Behind me is Route 4, where that car is passing by, and on the right. And a few hundred feet behind the wall on the other side of Route 4 is the Starship. And this photo was taken the day before the full Starship with both stages, before it was launched for the first time. Drink some water here. On my second trip to Texas in November of 2023, I shared a hotel room with another one of my friends who shares an interest in the space program, John Strickland. So this is a photo of us with the Starship in the background the day before it was launched for the second time. So about a mile west of the launch site is what they call the rocket garden, and that's where they store and display first and second stages of the Starship. So in the picture of the right, that's me down here standing in front of the Starship second stage, and just looking up at it from that close, it just blew me away how big it really is. You don't get an appreciation on that until you get that close to it. And I could envision that it really could carry 100 people inside the Starship. Also along Route 4 is a site that they call the shipyard. And the large buildings on the left there are bays. They're called mega bays, where they assemble the Starship in a vertical position. And they're going to be building larger ones shortly. They're going to be called gigabays, which will hold a lot more Starships at one time. Also, since the time I was there, they've also constructed another building, which they call the Star Factory, where they're building the spaceship parts. And it's not only doing it here, but they're building very similar buildings in Cape Canaveral, where they're also going to be launching the Starship from. So they're mass producing these things. They'll be mass producing them very quickly. The plan is to build more than one Starship per day. And every 26 months, a launch window opens up where you can launch to Mars using the least fuel. So the plan of Elon Musk is that every 26 months, they will send 1,000 Starships to Mars. And by doing this, Musk claims that they can have a city on Mars with 1 million people by the middle of this century. Now, Elon Musk is known for being absurdly optimistic, to say the least, but he does this to instill in his employees a sense of urgency. But he actually has a pretty good record of achieving things that he claims he's going to do. It's a very good record of that. It's just that it's usually at a much later date than is first announced. So the Mechazilla launch tower is really an amazing launch tower. On the left here are what they call chopsticks, which open and close. And then there's a quick disconnect arm, and the structure right in front of the tower is the orbital launch mount, where the Starship sits on that. So the chopsticks open and close, and they move up and down. They also rotate right and left. They lift the Super Heavy atop the orbital launch mount, and they lift the Starship on top of the Super Heavy. And not only that, but the chopsticks catch the Super Heavy and the Starship after each flight. That's the plan. So speaking about innovation, and this is a picture of the chopsticks lifting the Super Heavy and setting it down on the launch mount. And in this video, they're actually lifting the Starship and setting it down on top of the Super Heavy. Now this video is speeded up a lot, at least 10 times, I'm sure, that in reality they do that very slowly and carefully. So now I'd like to review the flight testing that has been done thus far. They did some flight tests of the second stage only back in the 2019 to 2021 period. And they did that because they knew the second stage would be the most challenging to develop. So that informed the design of the vehicle. And then in 2023, they started testing the complete vehicle with both stages. So they had 2 flights in 2023. Those are the 2 I attended. Then they have 4 flights in 2024 and 3 thus far in 2025. All of these flights used a suborbital trajectory, but the trajectory, it was just short of orbital velocity. landing in the Pacific or Indian Ocean, depending which flight it was. And they did this on purpose. There no meaningful payload on any of these flights. The only objective is to acquire data so they can learn how to fly this thing. SpaceX's philosophy is to fly often and not be afraid of failure. That way they quickly find the problems and can fix them. So the first 6 flights were of what they call the Block 1 configuration. And there were numerous problems, as you'd expect on anything this new and different than what's come before. But steady progress was made. Each flight seemed to be getting better than the previous flight. And on the 5th flight, they actually succeeded in catching the Super Heavy on the Mechazilla launch tower. So that was a big accomplishment. They also have succeeded, they succeeded in landing the 2nd stage of the Starship in the ocean on flights 4, 5, and 6. Now, flights 7 through 9, they completely changed a lot of the design. They had thousands of design changes, and that's called Starship Block 2. They continued to make progress with the 1st stage. They succeeded in catching the 1st stages on flights 7 and 8. On flight 9, they actually reused one of the 1st stages that they had caught earlier. They didn't make any catch attempt on flight 9. And but unfortunately, they've had bad luck with the 2nd stage on the Block 2 version. On flight 7 and 8, the 2nd stage exploded in flight, although for different reasons. And on flight 9, they got through the engine burn just fine. It didn't explode, but the 2nd stage lost control and disintegrated on re-entry. Not only that, but the 2nd stage for flight 10 exploded during a static fire test, so that was also destroyed. But they're proceeding. They're not slowing their pace. Flight 10, which is also the Starship Block 2 flight, should occur as soon as mid-August, or about 3 weeks from now. And flight 11, that's going to be the last flight of the Block 2 version. That should occur about a month after flight 10, if flight 10, goes well. Block 3 flights are scheduled to start before the end of this year. And they're also hoping to catch a 2nd stage with the Mechazilla launch tower by the end of this year. So now I'm going to show a video from Flight 5, which is one of their more successful launches. And there are 3 parts. The entire mission was almost an hour long, so they've just chosen 3 parts of it to show. The launch, the catch of the 1st stage by the chopsticks on the Mechazilla launch tower, and then the landing, soft landing of the 2nd stage in the ocean. Now, the soft landing occurred at night, and they wanted to photograph it. But you don't want to ship anywhere near where it's landing. So they put a camera on a buoy in the ocean. This was in the Indian Ocean. And it turns out that the Starship landed precisely in front of the buoy, and they got perfect video of the landing. So I'll show that now.
Attention all flight crew members, this is the final go, no go poll for operations. Raptor 1.
Raptor, let's go.
Raptor 2. Stage 1. Stage 2. Go. Flight directors go for launch. We have liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange. Max Q.
Ship engine startup.
Stage separation. Booster, respect burn.
On LVS 0, 30 seconds till catch decision.
Confirming 30 seconds to make that decision.
10 seconds till catch decision.
Stage separation confirmed. Flight directors go for booster return. Operator go vote is set true. We are go for catch.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch.
Booster MTS is saved.
And I ignite 13 of those Raptor engines. This view is incredible right now. I can't wait for us to hear the sonic boom.
Booster landing burn startup.
We can see those trucks. This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully taught the super heavy booster.
Sevilla has caught the booster.
Ship idiots power function nominal.
Starship has entered the atmosphere. Starship is approaching the peak heating phase of entry.
Landing burn startup.
Starship is off target. Starship has landed.
It's pretty impressive. NASA is also developing a large new super heavy launch vehicle, which is called the Space Launch System, or SLS. Now, this launch vehicle is not as capable as the Starship, but it is about as capable as the Saturn V launch vehicle, which was used to land humans on the moon with the Apollo program. The SLS is an expendable launch vehicle, okay? And its cost, because it's expendable, its cost is about $4.2 billion per launch. Now, that's the average cost of the first 4 launches as reported by the NASA Inspector General in one of his reports. Now, the Starship cost per launch, when they finally start selling it to customers, is expected to be about $40 million. So what this means is that you could launch more than 100 Starships for every one SLS that is launched. The first launch of the SLS was in November of 2022, and that was the Artemis 1 mission. The second launch is projected to occur next year. Now, right away, you can see that the Starship has a problem with launch cadence, that it taking 4 years between the first and second launches. The Starship actually launched before any of the full 2 stages of the Starship, or the SL launched before that. But it's already, the Starship has had 9 launches in that period and is going to have probably a few more launches before the second flight of the SLS. The Artemis program is our program for returning humans to the moon. And Artemis 1, that was a flight in 2022 with the SLS. It launched the Orion spacecraft without crew in it around the moon and back. And the SLS worked perfectly on that flight. Artemis 2 is expected to launch in April of next year, about 9 months from now. And that will have a crew of 4 aboard, and they'll fly around the moon and back. Now, the Artemis 3 mission is the mission where they intend to land humans on the lunar surface. The SLS and Orion can't land on the moon, so NASA held a competition for a spacecraft that would land the astronauts on the moon. And the Starship, SpaceX won that competition with the Starship. So these SLS, Orion, and the Starship will all be used for the Artemis 3 mission. Artemis 3 will probably occur about 2028 or 2029. It should, I think it will occur, this decade. So the way it's going to work, the Starship gets launched first, and the Starship will be refueled in Earth orbit. So here is a Starship being refueled, and the way they refuel it, they made it, the 2 vehicles together side by side, and transfer the fuel from one vehicle to the other. So this is the Starship in lunar orbit. After it gets refueled in Earth orbit, then it flies to lunar orbit. Then the SLS is launched with the Orion spacecraft. And the Orion spacecraft is the vehicle on the right here, which it rendezvous and docks with the Starship. They dock nose to nose. And 2 of the 4 astronauts would transfer to the Starship, and then the Starship will land on the moon. And it has enough fuel in it that it not only lands on the moon, but it then returns after the mission, after they spend several days on the moon, it'll return to lunar orbit, and it'll rendezvous and dock with Orion again, and then the astronauts will come back to Earth aboard Orion. So this is what the lunar lander version of the Starship will look like. It's you can get a sense of the size by looking, at the people here on the bottom, and they have some kind of an elevator system to get from up here, where they'll be during the flight, to get to the surface. So it's just so much bigger than the lunar lander of the Apollo era. Well, it turns out it's not only the US that has a program to land humans on the moon. The Chinese word for astronaut is taikonaut, and China has announced the goal of landing taikonauts on the moon by 2030. And they've been making rather rapid progress lately. They've returned samples from the moon 2 different times, and by doing so, they've demonstrated the rendezvous and docking capability that they'll need for their human missions. So there's a possibility that China could return humans to the lunar surface before the US does. So there's a little bit of a competition going on. But the principal goal of the Starship program has always been to transport humans to Mars and to make human life multiplanetary. So this slide shows the Starship entering Mars' atmosphere prior to landing on Mars. Earlier this year, Elon Musk spoke about a plan of SpaceX to launch 5 Starships to Mars in the 2026 launch window. These Starships would land on Mars, each carrying one or more of these Optimus robots, which are humanoid robots that Tesla is building. Now, as usual, Elon Musk has set a wildly optimistic goal for his employees to try to work toward. I doubt that SpaceX will be launching any Starships to Mars in 2026, but I think it's quite possible that they could launch one or more Starships to Mars in the 2028 to 2029 launch window. So this is an artist's conception of a human settlement on Mars. You can see some starships in the background. And this animated series of pictures shows the buildup of a settlement on Mars. The plan is to build the settlement over time to about 1 million people, which is the size of a small city. The vision is that the city would have restaurants and pizza joints and all the other amenities like cities on Earth. And why stop at one city? Someday there could be multiple cities on Mars. It would take a very long time, but it may be possible to terraform Mars, transforming the planet into something more Earth-like. Mars is about half the size of Earth, but since it doesn't have any oceans, it has about the same land mass as the Earth. So someday there could be millions or even billions of people living on Mars. And we needn't stop with Mars either. In a future century, interstellar travel might become possible. Humans could settle on Earth-like worlds that we haven't even discovered yet. In so doing, we could give the precious gift of life to more people. So this is the type of future I would like to see, and it just seems like a much more bright future than remaining on Earth and risking some calamity coming along, which would make human life extinct. So that's the end of my talk. Thanks for listening.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
If the SLS is less capable and very much more expensive, why? Why are we doing that?
Good, that's a very good question. When the SLS, when they initiated the program, that was before SpaceX had even built the Falcon, before it had built the Falcon 9 and before they were landing the Falcon 9. So it looked like a good idea at the time, but it's turned out to be a horrible idea, actually. I think you sense that I'm not a fan of the SLS. And they could do the lunar mission just using the Starship without any problem. They don't need the SLS for the Artemis program. The SLS will be a little bit helpful in the beginning, simply because the Starship is not fully safe for launching humans yet. It doesn't have as robust an abort system as the SLS does. And I think NASA will probably want at least 100 consecutive successful missions of the Starship before they trust it to launch humans. So in the very beginning, the SLS will be a little bit helpful, but I think it's going to have about maybe 5 flights, and then they'll cancel the whole program.
Well,
Thank you.
SLS means Senate Launch System. Use your imagination.
Yes, right. Question
As
here?
a follow-up to his question, where do you see the future of NASA?
Well, I think we need NASA, but, you know, we don't need NASA in the launch business, the trucking business. I think
Right.
that that's mature enough that they can rely on other companies and SpaceX. What NASA is good for is doing the real hard things, you know, that nobody else will dare to try to do because they're too expensive. Things like developing nuclear-powered spacecraft, like the nuclear thermal rocket engines spacecraft that do things like that, because that's technology that no other company would try to do on their own because it's just too risky. So NASA's needed, and all the robotic probes they do are just wonderful, but you know, they have to rely more on the commercial industry for the routine stuff like launch.
So the launch system, Megla Pixel or whatever it was, the Starship launches from there and then it captures stage 1 when it comes back. Thinking about how much heat is generated in a launch and in a retrieval, how long will that launch system last before it needs to be replaced?
What's the warranty on those chopsticks?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Self-insured.
Yeah, good question. They're hoping, you know, that it's going to last a long. Each vehicle will last a long time. They're probably. I know on the Falcon 9, they've got the fleet leader now has had 29 different flights. So each and they keep extending it. They're trying to qualify it, the Falcon 9 for 50 different flights, and they're building the Starship so it's more rugged than the Falcon 9. They're trying to design it so that it's more rapidly reusable and also much more rugged. So it should last, I would think, 100 flights or more.
What are the propellants used for the different stages of their rockets? They have.
Yes, both stages use methane for the propellant and liquid oxygen for the oxidizer. Well, they're both propellants. The fuel is methane. And they did that on purpose. It's the best fuel if you're going to reuse it, because if you use kerosene, which is, they have a fuel called RP1, rocket propellant 1, which is essentially refined kerosene. That fuel it generates a lot of coking and soot, and then they have to clean the nozzles, you know, after just about every flight. So the methane means it burns very cleanly, and they don't have to do much refurbishment at all. So it's got advantages. And the other advantage is they can actually generate this fuel on Mars. They, there's a reaction called the Sabatier reaction, which they can make methane fuel plus oxygen out of the constituents of the Mars atmosphere. The Mars atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, and using a little bit of hydrogen that they can get from the ice on Mars, they can use this reaction to make rocket fuel for the return trip from Mars. So that's the other big advantage. Yes?
This is not a scientific question by any stretch. The name of the tower, is that named after somebody in Musk's organization, or is that a scientist that I don't know about?
I'm not sure. I think it's maybe after maybe from the movies or something. You know, there's a Mechazilla in certain movies.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure about that though.
Well, thanks a lot, Jerry, I appreciate it.
I was just gonna
one more
I was just
question?
to make a comment that there's notice a funny resemblance to this system of Starship to what the von Braun scientists at Fort Bliss were doing in '48 with a fully reusable rocket with a lot of engines. And also,
There
if you
is.
remember the early movies like Destination Moon, where they had the whole rocket sitting on the moon and the guys going down on a cable. And after all this expendable crap and ICBMs and quick pop the moon flights, now we're back to what commercial flight was going to be 80 years ago.
Right.
I thought that was interesting that what comes around goes around.
Yeah.
Von Braun was right again.
You're very true. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.